and welcome to episode 12. So it is the middle of the holiday season, and our brains are a little fried. And actually, we thought this was episode 13, but now we know that it's number 12. So here we are. And before we begin, I do want to plug an upcoming event that is happening on January 7th in York. And that is the Susan Miller Make Music Festival. We encourage you to join the York Music Teachers Association, Studio 117, the YCPrep, the York County Honors Choirs, Public Disco Porch, the York Youth and Junior Symphonies, and the Shine Foundation for a day of making music in downtown York. The free event will feature age-appropriate, hands-on activities, drop-in sessions for musicians of all ages and levels, and live performances by students and professionals throughout the day at the Appell Center. And MarketView Arts, Heidelberg UCC, St. John Episcopal Church, Creative York, and York Central Market House. So make a day of it and come and sample all that is being offered. And it sounds like a really exciting day. And actually, we are going to be involved. Life Between the Notes is going to be involved. And actually, Morgan will be there. I'm unable to be there due to some prior commitments. But she will be conducting short interviews like we have here on Life Between the Notes. And both with children and adults. And we can discuss what music means to them and the impact that it has had on them and their family. So we're really excited about the event, and it sounds really fun and really creative. Mm-hmm. And I think this is the brainchild of Gretchen Decker, who was a previous guest on our show. And she had asked us to be a part of this. And I think it's a really cool thing. And I think kids will find it to be.
Yeah, I hope lots of people show up. It sounds really exciting. I think what like a cool thing as a kid who's interested in music, like all these different stations, and you can try instruments, and there's auditions and podcasts.
There are a ton of different organizations that are involved, and there are different locations. So it's essentially, and I believe it's between 10 and 4 on that day on January 7th. So you have time to take the day and see what is being offered. So pretty cool.
Yeah, very neat.
Yeah. So Morgan is back from her hiatus, which was not necessarily planned, and we've been kind of on a hiatus. And well, it's just been busy for both of us. And so what have you been up to, Morgan?
Well, it's funny because you said that. I'm thinking, like, did I take a hiatus? I mean, like, we haven't been together. Like, I don't know what I was doing. No, it's just been a busy fall. I mean, you had a busier fall than I did. I think my beginning of my school year was sort of wrapped up in moving and like doing just a ton of house projects.
And you did a lot of painting. I saw lots of painting on Instagram.
Oh my gosh, yes. Like, I've learned so much about paint finishes, taping, edging.
Taping is the worst part.
Yeah, but it makes it's worth it, because then it's way better than edging, because we tried edging like on one side of one room, and I was like, nope, we're not doing this. It takes too long. So it's just, just that chaos of like getting your personal life situated and then work. And, fortunately work is busy, but it's like there's no time left over at the end of things. When you're like trying to do house projects and gig on the weekends and teach during the week. So it's just, not anything like so unusual, but just the way it goes sometimes. But,
it just adds
more
to everything that you're already doing. And and when you're not in space, go ahead.
No, it's like, you're right. When you're not, like, when your space changes, and my office, like, I didn't want to unpack things until I had painted, because like you can see all that sheet music back there. I'm not moving it around how many times, so until you can paint, and then put up shelves and then unpack. It just takes time. So it was like, feeling sort of like not having access to things for a couple months, and yeah,
Mhm.
it's tough. Transition is
Yeah.
hard. Yeah.
Yeah. Just chaotic. Yeah. It's
Hmm.
right.
Yeah, I
Yep.
was like joking with my students all like during the beginning of the school year. This is like not my choice mode of operation. This sort of like, well, I have that piece of music, but it's at the bottom of a box, or like, oh, I didn't plan to bring that because I didn't have anywhere to leave myself a note. It's just that's not like my usual. So I think definitely adds a
Yeah.
layer of stress when you've got that sort of chaos going on.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That is actually kind of my usual. I try to be organized, like, and I'm okay for a while, and then things just scatter,
Hmm.
music, and that kind of thing. So
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah.
I do need to
Yeah.
work on that organizational stuff, but yeah. So and so we haven't actually done any episodes for a while, and part of it too was, I mean, I've been busy too with, and probably, I mean, I've been posting about this on social media almost every day in December, but I had recorded Midwinter's Gift, this album with oboe piano music, and so and it was a whole other kind of chaos added on to trying to do the regular thing, and that's actually partly, well, that is what we're going to talk about today, is discussing that holiday stress that
Hmm.
everybody feels, whether you're a musician or not. But we wanted to talk today about how it affects musicians,
Hmm.
because of course things just get busier, and like if you have kids, things get busier with them. If and then when you're a musician, of course, there are more gigs because people want to hear more Christmas music, and there's just added pressure, and just with the time constraints. And so, Morgan, like, what has your experience been with gigging over the holidays?
Well, I mean, first of all, I think that your album that you recorded, one, sounds amazing, but two, like, is no small undertaking. Like, you totally, I think people don't realize what a massive project that is. And then when people do it, like, and even if you signed, my friends that have recorded with different labels and things, the promotion of your album really sits with you. So if you choose to do it on your own and you
Yes,
put all
right.
of this effort into it, and then that work that goes with it, and you have to hope that people are receptive and enjoy it and want to listen. And I mean, it's a lot. So I think it's pretty amazing what you and Francis have done.
Oh, thank
I'm
you.
just, yeah, like
Thanks.
super impressed with that. And I think it's like deserves a moment here
Well,
while we
thank
talk.
you. Thanks.
Yeah.
Well, and and I don't think I realized how much goes into it.
Mhm.
And she describes it as a marathon, because I mean it has taken an entire year,
Yep.
and to think of all that, like, went into it, and all the different pieces that have to, from like the planning, the commissioning of pieces, the planning,
Yeah.
and then the practicing, and then the actual recording, and then getting it out there, and actually
Yeah.
creating the physical CD. And yeah, it's but thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and like how little of that is your actual performance and how much of it is other stuff. So, it's like a big, it just, I think also that's indicative of what we do as musicians, where it's like we think that, or people think that 90% of what we do is this artistry and 10% is all this other stuff. And it's like so often the other way around. It's so hard to find time
Yeah.
to work on your craft, and so much other, so many other
Mhm.
pieces are required. So,
Yeah, right. And
mhm,
it's amazing how much, like, you have to deal with, like, the social media and the promotion of things,
mhm,
um and like and getting it out there. And yes, you're
yeah,
absolutely right. It's kind of like the iceberg, what you
mhm,
see on the top, that's
yeah,
you hear the music, and it's, oh, but what went,
yep,
underneath the water, there was like
yeah.
all of this. So
yeah, it's so true. I mean, and that's true like always for us.
yeah.
Yeah, and then I think it's one of the hard things about working mostly for yourself too is
Mhm.
even if you have something to offer that you think is really good, you're the person that has to offer it. So
Yeah.
that's like really, really challenging. But
Yeah.
anyway, I
Right.
didn't mean to derail us from your question, but
No, no. I mean, I'm happy to talk about it,
yeah.
but yeah, right. And there are then other things too with it, which I mean, certainly we can make a whole other episode about this, but like, and just worrying about the perception that other people have
Yeah.
of all of that. And it's just, it's been interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. But yeah, I mean, I just think, in your case too, it's been layered on top of all the regular holiday stuff because it's a holiday album. So like,
Mhm.
that just puts a whole extra spin on the season for you.
It does.
But
Right. And then I was like, well, why did I do this? Because I'm already typically, busy in December,
mhm,
and now, kind of compounded that.
mhm,
But it's a great thing, like to be
yeah,
able to share that music. I mean, I love it, obviously myself, and so I want people to hear it. So
yeah, yeah. And everything comes in seasons. So,
mhm,
holidays are always busy, but this one being busier is its own season of
exactly,
things. Yeah. It's
yes,
the way it
right,
goes. Yeah.
right,
So, but that's like been true, I think, for my experience gigging and over the holidays. And Christmas is an interesting time. Christmas and Easter is a flute player. The
mm,
Messiah doesn't need us.
yeah,
And Nutcracker does. If you happen to be somewhere that you're doing that, people are doing Nutcracker without canned music, which is not that often, depending on like where you're at, the resources of the groups around you.
mhm,
So you have to be usually somewhere with like a bigger population and for them to be able to afford to do that kind of production. But Christmas can go either way for me. So sometimes people want flute at like Christmas Eve services when things are still very reflective. Um, but it's not always a busy time. Like my Christmas gigs are often just orchestra concerts that
mhm,
are Christmas or holiday themed. So it's there have been years, like we were talking about this before we hit record, where like I had a year right before COVID, the Christmas right before, I was driving to Philly every night for 2 weeks for gigs, which was great and so fun. And one of them was at the Kimmel Center, and like I was really enjoying it, but it also was totally insane. And
mhm,
those were both full ensemble gigs. It wasn't that somebody was just hiring flute for something, or it's not like where you get the brass quintets and that kind of stuff. So I think in some ways um it's an interesting season for my instrument. And
mhm,
that definitely is a big part of like this year. I was honestly busier during 2020 recording things because more
mm,
people wanted to make recordings because there was
yeah,
so little happening. But this year I only had 2 weekends that were full, and
mhm,
I wasn't sad about it.
yeah,
Yeah.
right. It's nice to have that downtime, certainly
Hmm.
when you can get it.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that you bring that up about, the instrumentation of it
Hmm.
all, because we had put this question out there um, on Facebook, asking for people's thoughts on this subject. And actually, Ryan Kaufman, saxophone player, who we also had interviewed
Hmm.
a few episodes back, he brought that up. He's like, well, for saxophone, there's not a
Hmm.
ton, that is, Christmas related.
Right.
And when he said that, I was like, oh, because I actually don't think about that because,
Right.
well, oboes are used in Messiah, and which
Hmm.
is, you know, and of course, and obviously Nutcracker as well,
Yeah.
um, which
Yeah.
I have never played the Nutcracker.
Neither have I.
No?
Actually,
Oh,
the parts of it I have played were playing. I did Fantasia with video one
yes.
New Year's, and that's the most of the Nutcracker I've played.
Huh.
Yeah, yeah. I really think some of
Interesting.
that's a big product of where I've lived.
Yes, yes.
Um, it's just never been available, like even as
Mhm.
an option, to get
Right.
hired for in the places that I've been.
And typically for those kinds of gigs too, people will hire the same person year to year.
Yep.
And that's the way it is, and that's fine. But yeah, so I'm kind of fearful actually of being asked to play the Nutcracker in a way. Messiah, I got that down. I mean, we're that.
Yeah.
Plenty.
Yeah. No, I know. And I think too, like, you know, yes, flute doesn't get used for like some of the traditional things. I mean, there are church services, or like you have a trio, like people do holiday dinners and luncheons and, you know, services, and there's all kinds of places that you can play. But I think some of it too depends on how much you put yourself out there for it, like what communities of players you're involved in. So, you know, I will play church services, but not as often as some people. So it's like, what circles are you in, and where are you sort of like, I hate to say promoting because that seems wrong for the conversation, but where are you sort of promoting yourself to work? Makes a big difference in where you get hired at this time of year.
Right. Yeah. So, and it's, and that too, that there are different pockets of and circles of, like you say, church musicians, and then there are the shows, musicals, there are, you know, well, in high schools, you know, and all different kinds of venues. So so we had asked other musicians, like I said, and we got responses from, now who I would call like career musicians. I don't know if there's another word for it, but you know, people who are, you know, performers essentially, and gigging, and gigging is pretty much what they do, as well as teaching privately and that kind of thing. But then there were also responses from people who have, you know, full-time jobs and gig on the weekends when they can. And so we asked them for their input. And so here are some of the biggest points that were made. And I'm going to bring up actually 5 different things that we gathered from people. And these are the stressors that happen during the holiday season. And of course, number 1 overall is the stress of being busy. And managing your time. And so one part of that is balancing your family life and work. Somebody mentioned missing social gatherings to be able to play gigs, and trying to celebrate, enjoy the holiday while being gone, like for most of the weekend and that kind of thing.
I mean, I went to a Christmas party this weekend at 9:30 after an orchestra concert. So, you know, it's how it goes. Right.
So it's like, you know, you fit it in when you can, I guess. But sometimes we'll talk about like saying no later, but sometimes you have to say no to those like family gatherings or social gatherings and that kind of thing. And sometimes, and I think, well, I'm guessing, but that a lot of us as musicians wait to celebrate the holiday after the holiday is over. In fact, like I've been talking about the album to people recently, and the idea for the album had come to me on December 26th. It was the day after Christmas. I'd been listening to a lot of Christmas music, but at the time I was baking cookies, right? And then people just kind of like, why are you baking Christmas cookies on December 26th?
Right,
you know?
Like,
that's
when you can do it.
That's when you have the time, right? And so but it's that kind of thing. Like sometimes those things like that you do with your family, and they have to be done afterwards.
Right. Yeah, and it's funny because I wonder if that's part of why I look forward to New Year's so much. Like I love New Year's, and I used to, when Lancaster Symphony used to do New Year's at American Music Theater, I often would get to sub, and I loved that gig. But just in general, I look forward to New Year's so much. And then once I had New Year's free, once that wasn't happening anymore, we started having a New Year's party. I mean, it was just like, I wonder if that's why I look forward to that.
Mhm.
Is that being on the other side?
Probably, yes,
Yeah.
right. That's your
Mhm.
downtime.
Mhm.
And 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 I think it's especially true with the whole like being busy for the people who have a full-time job and then plus are, gigging on the weekends
Right.
as well. I mean, that is tough. And I think um, you know, a large majority of us, the reason why we got into music is because we love playing our instrument. And
Mhm.
if you're a teacher, maybe a public school teacher, and and you still want to be playing and do that,
Yeah.
um, it's like that to me is very difficult because then you
Yeah,
have like
you're really getting
three different,
loaded.
yes,
Mhm.
right. So
Yeah. I don't know, it's interesting, and, like, it's interesting too because, if you really feel like you need the extra money from the gigs too, I mean, and that's sort of one of the next points, taps into that, but it also brings up an interesting point of, like, creating some boundaries around what you're willing to do and, like, what your parameters for gigging are, and are you
mhm,
at a point in your career that you can do that? Because that sort of, like, feels like a privilege to earn be in a position that you're not scared to say no. Um,
right,
there's
right.
other layers to that.
Hmm.
Yeah.
There was also somebody who mentioned that during this time that they purposely stay busy because the holidays are difficult for them.
Yeah.
And like just because of like prior family issues and hey, maybe you're actually trying to avoid your family, I don't know,
Yeah,
but
right.
at least the extended family, kind of thing,
Mhm.
but sometimes it's easier to stay busy so
Yeah.
don't have to think about those things, and yeah, it can be
Mhm.
tough.
Mhm.
The second point was the stress of inconsistency um, during this time, and and this certainly, I think this happens for all of us, that it kind of ebbs and flows.
Mhm.
That, and like you said earlier, that this year has been light for you,
Mhm.
and that and I and but you've been like super busy on and others, and it's the same for me as well,
Mhm.
and all of us really, and part of it, I mean, it could be an economy thing as well. It
Yeah.
depends, like, because some churches can't afford
Right.
or might be slashing budgets and that kind of thing, and
Right.
live music is often like the
Yeah,
first.
it's really interesting to think about it. I mean, I'm sure the economy has plenty to do with that. And then, our whole year, if you're a freelancer, can be that way. You never quite know what a season will bring. Sometimes it's so
Yes,
busy and you think, like, where did this come from? Like, I
yes.
have more gigs lined up for January than I had for December and November combined.
Wow.
That
Yeah,
almost never happens because
that's rare.
people
Uh-huh.
eat up their budgets, and who wants to go out in the dead of winter after Christmas? So I don't know if people were sort of spreading themselves out and having that same sense that I do, that there's just so much holiday stuff happening this year. So they planned for other things, or, maybe they thought they'd have a more captive audience because there's less going on. But I just,
Mhm.
what's the reason for it? Who knows? But it's
Yeah,
very unpredictable. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And actually, there is an a school district. Well, it's Central York School District. They have their concert in January,
Yes. Hmm.
and I don't know if it's a holiday concert per se. I don't know that,
Yeah.
but they don't have a December concert, and they have it. I think it's like the just a week into January or something.
Hmm.
Um, which yeah, is smart,
I
I
think
think,
so.
because
Yeah.
of bombardment of everything that it happens
Hmm.
in December. So yeah, and I think, and I don't know too, it could be a post-COVID kind of thing too, as well as as far as the inconsistency and the hiring of musicians as well. But
Yeah.
um So
Yeah.
The third point is the stress of when to say no, which of course that doesn't just happen in December.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Things just happened in December.
Yeah.
But this is obviously this is the time when gigs are typically more plentiful, and you can't do it all. We were talking earlier about how often gigs are on the same date, and you're asked like 4 times to play on the same date.
Yes. Yeah. And if you say yes to the wrong thing first, well, then too bad, you've already said yes. So unless you're, for me, if that happens, and unless I'm like way far in advance and I feel like there's plenty of time for me to be replaced, and they're going to be able to find somebody, you just have to stick with the first thing you say yes to.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Right. And that's where, some of that professionalism comes in as well.
Yeah. Because there are some people that don't do that.
Yeah. Right. It's tough. And sometimes so my youngest child's birthday is December 5th. So, obviously, and there's a point where my husband will be like, okay, no, this date needs to be empty, because we need to celebrate his birthday, because I want to fill up a calendar, and from it is so hard to say no. But this year, I'm like, this is Zach's birthday,
Yeah.
Keep it clean and don't put anything on that date. And
but it's really hard too, because we're primed to want a full calendar that says something about our skill level or success. And it's really tough.
Right. And that actually, that brings up a point that just because you're not busy does not mean that you're a bad musician.
No. And it might also mean the opposite. It might mean that you've reached a level of comfort where, you can say, you can draw a line somewhere.
Yes.
And in some ways, it could be generous, because maybe you're passing that gig off to somebody else who really needs it, or to someone who's just trying to get started, or a student. I know there's a church that calls me often, and I finally said, hey, here's a couple of my students that can do this, and they need this experience, and they could use the paycheck. Please call them next time. It feels good to be in a space, and I'm not saying I'm an amazing musician. It's just saying I'm at a point when I can pass some of that stuff off, and it helps me, but it also feels good to be able to share.
Yeah. Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And great that you do have students who are able to take that on, which is says a lot about you as well. So
I don't know. I mean, it's just nice to be in that position. But I think the other thing that being married, because I was a little older when I got married, and I had spent a lot of time by myself, and I would just work whenever I wanted to work. It didn't matter, what I was doing, because I didn't have anyone to, accommodate, like you say about your son's birthday, or when I got married, Easter is a big holiday in my husband's family. Everybody gets together. I started saying no to Easter gigs because it was a big deal if you were not able to be there with everyone. And it was means something to my husband. And obviously that's important to me. So, then it's you start thinking about things from a different perspective, where it has meaning in your career, but how much? And am I taking all these gigs just for my ego? Or am I, in a position, if I'm able to say no, sometimes it's important to prioritize the people in your family that are important to you. And that's a really tough thing about holiday gigs.
Right. Absolutely. I'm actually going to quote Ryan Kaufman again, that saying no and being busy, it doesn't serve the music, the audience, or the person contracting the gig if I don't have time to prepare sufficiently. So, and that to me says a lot about his professionalism, that he doesn't want to just take a gig to take a gig. And, you know, he wants to do well. He wants to be able to prepare for that gig. And so sometimes like you look at that calendar and like, well, in reality, with all I have going on with my students and my family and such, you know, am I going to have time to do this well?
Well, and that's something maybe for all of us to consider too, is, you know, we like to think we can do it all, but if you're going to show up and not be able to play well because you're so overextended, you're not doing yourself any favors at that point.
The fourth point, so somebody had mentioned this in one of their comments, and I'm actually experiencing this at the moment, is the stress of eating poorly. And so that person had mentioned that they don't eat well during this time because of being so. And this is part of the ramifications of it. And of course, this is the time of year when sweets are like readily available. And, you know, you got students giving you candy and or your husband, like mine, like just buys cookies and brings them home, and then they're just sitting there and you're like, why did you buy these? And but to me it's kind of a vicious cycle, because like I'll start getting busy, then I start not eating well and not prioritizing it, but then the problem with that is then I'm not feeling well, and just mostly in the form of not having energy or being like really crabby. Not that I'm ever crabby,
of course not,
no. But not. But I know for me personally, like, you know, I mean, I am certainly affected by the foods that I eat, and exhaustion just starts to settle in, and I just have to be mindful of what I'm doing. But I, you know, honestly, I have not been doing well with that like the past week or two.
Well, it's like a very real thing that we only have so much bandwidth. So there's only so many things we can handle. I read this somewhere one time where it's like, why when we get stressed, we make poor decisions about eating, because your brain like literally shuts things off to save energy for what it needs. So it's the same reason, you know, you have like a health something in the family, like somebody's sick or you're busy at work or what, and like everything kind of just around it seems to go to crap, you know, because you just literally don't have the capacity. So, and it's that same sense of just like, this is a short-term thing, you know, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't look for ways to help ourselves. But I think that's a big part of it.
Right. Yeah. Yep. And then the sixth one, or the sixth, I cannot count today.
No, that's okay. Yesterday, I mean, this is the way the musician brain works in December. Yesterday in lessons, we sight read a lot of Christmas duets, my students and I, in December, because it's like fun and it's good practice for sight reading. We just have a good time. But anyway, so I played in the wrong key, just like blatantly, completely in the wrong key, like 5 times yesterday. We'd start and they'd be cooking and I would just instantly there's no rhyme or reason to it. It's that same like something shut off and like this is all I got.
Yes. Oh, for sure. Right. So I can count to 5 on some days, but not today. But anyway, this was the 5th one. And just the stress of not moving, or maybe even like moving too much. And so personally, I mean, I know that I feel much better after I have moved, whether that means like stretching, like even just stretching a little bit helps, or whether like it's an intense like workout and that kind of thing. You know, it definitely helps like get me moving and energizes my day. Really, one of the first things to go for probably most people would be my guess. I mean, I'm not an expert, but you know, finding and making the time to move is sometimes it's often not a priority. And and like that's where like habits and that kind of thing like comes in. But then I also say, like, you know, there's also possibly moving too much, because I mean, I've also experienced this as well, that if I'm doing too much as far as exercising, and I'm also busy, and I'm also like stressed about, you know, something else going on in my life, that I mean, you know, I have certainly burned out, you know, by doing all that too. So
yeah. And again, it's a little bit like you said, habits, but it's choices. It's like forcing yourself to do things you don't want to.
Yeah.
But it's like, it definitely goes both ways. Like we've had seasons where we were like getting up and going to the gym really early in the morning. But then when I was busy at work, it was almost like going and doing these big workouts all the time was just like making things worse. I was more tired. I was more stressed. I was more sore, you know, because you only have so much energy to use up during the day. And so you have to find that balance for yourself. It's a lot of it's like being attentive to yourself, but I think it's James Clear, and there's another author, maybe Adam Grant. I can't get it. I have to think about that. But they talk a lot about like how willpower is not really a thing. Like we can't lean on our willpower to get us through, you know, it's like seasons like this where you have to make a decision and make it a habit, you know, where it's like those really annoying like cliche suggestions like park your car further away, and like, you know, yes, it's cold out, but getting some fresh air and like walking further from the car to the store, and all these like little things that just, they're small, but if you can remember to do them, will add up. So it doesn't feel like this huge undertaking. But I think it's so true, especially during seasons like, you know, now and holiday gigs and all of that. But if you're leaning on your willpower too much, then everything just sort of unravels on you.
You said earlier too about it being short term, you know, and because now that I, you know, I know about myself that, okay, in December, and sometimes actually October through December, like I like this is the time where like I have to like lay low, you know, and I know that once January hits, I'll be a little more motivated, and I'll have more time. And so, okay, so I'll just like kind of maintain, you know, like, you know, maybe I'm just, you know, for 15 minutes, you know, doing some yoga or stretching, or going for a walk. Unless it's 10 degrees outside. So then I go to my treadmill. But yeah, so and just like kind of not beating yourself up about that either. It's like, okay, like this is the way it is right now, and I can only do so much, and you know, I can push later.
And I think that is like a bigger success than pushing yourself to do 80,000 things all the time, is to know yourself well enough to know what you need. You know, we can't be 110% all the time. It's just not possible. And so if you have areas of your life that you need to be at your best, but there's too many things demanding your attention, then some of them are going to have to come back a notch, you know, and it's like, my laundry waits longer during December. Like,
oh my word.
You know,
I have not cleaned my house. And it's terrible. I have laundry on my
last week, and I was like celebrating myself, you know. I was like, oh my gosh, I ran the vacuum. And even when you get that time back, like it's not all going to happen right away. So it's like also having those realistic expectations that once you reach the end of your busy season, you're not going to turn around the next day and do all your laundry and deep clean your bathrooms and like catch up on all your email. It's just not all going to happen in one day. And you know, it shouldn't.
Laundry has a season.
Yes.
But so those were the major stressors that came up. And then, so of course, and we've kind of been talking about this along the way, but these are some ways to cope. And I came up with 4 things, which we've kind of been talking about. And of course, you know, this is in the ideal world. And just because I'm saying this does not mean that I do it like all the time, or that I'm even doing it now.
And like maybe just the things I do well this year, I won't do well next year. That's okay. Just trying to be like a little bit aware and like do what you can.
Oh yeah, definitely. So the first way to try and cope, it would be to block out time. And, looking ahead and knowing that, and sometimes it's hard to like pick a specific date because, okay, so what if you say, okay, December 17th, I think I'm going to take that day for me, but then you get a call for a really, really good gig.
Mm-hmm.
So then it's like, what are you going to do?
Like not being too rigid with yourself.
Right. So then you can transfer that time for yourself to another date, or another morning or something like that.
Yeah. And it may even be like looking for pockets of time, maybe it's not a whole day, but it's like looking for space. I really I have like that fight with myself to put my phone down and make sure I'm like not spending my evenings just like sucked into media somehow, where it's like I'm sitting down and actually allowing myself to relax for the hour I have at the end of the day after lessons. Or like I know this month we were better about like there was a free afternoon, and instead of just like sitting around the house, it was like, well, let's go do something, like my husband and I together. Because we, normally if I have that free afternoon, it's like, yeah, I'm just gonna like sit here in my sweatpants, because it's December. So it's like looking for little pockets and sort of being intentional maybe about what you do with your time. Maybe you want to sit around in your sweatpants, like that's also good.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Maybe I'll do that today.
Yeah.
But yeah. And so the second one was like, blocking out that downtime. And right. Even if it's just like, you could even like on a daily basis, like block out some time, like even if it's only like 10 or 15 minutes, like if it's reading, just sitting, maybe staring at the wall. I don't know, but
yeah. But
getting your
and
cat.
I think yes, yeah, whatever it is, like I think a little bit goes such a long way, especially if you do it consistently. And like I know for me, once the semester ended at Millersville and I had more like daytimes free, it meant like, oh, I can like take yoga, I'm not just teaching. So I've just been like taking a lot of yoga classes. And okay, so yes, it's an hour of the day, but like that time's not always there, so it's like just grabbing it when you can.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, or if you're like out running errands and like doing something really small for yourself, like a lot of times if I'm in the car, I'll listen to a podcast, and sometimes it's like I don't need to hear more stuff, like just put music on, or just like be quiet in the car, like not be inundated with noise. That could feel like a treat right now. Or like stopping and getting yourself a coffee while you're out running your errands. Or
definitely. And so the third point then of a way to cope was nutrition. Of course we talked about this, but and eating as well as you can, and like and a lot of that is like preparation.
Yeah, this is a tough one.
It is tough. And again, I will go through times where I'm like, oh, okay, I'm actually making a grocery list, or I'm actually like meal planning, but then of course like also takes time and energy to do, and just doesn't always happen. But preparing as much as you can.
And like we were talking about earlier, just like enlisting help. I when I'm really busy, and I know sometimes I do it too much, but like I'll lean on my husband a little bit, like, can you like prep whatever we're cooking so that when I get home, like I can just throw it in the pan and like I can do that part of it. There are nights that he will cook when I'm really busy because I'm getting home so late. But some of that too is like I've gotten much better over time because it's not just me eating, it's both of us eating. So I don't like want to see both of us just let all of our like healthy eating habits go to crap in December, so picking things that make leftovers, like trying to just make, so there's things around for us to go after that aren't just the cookies. And it totally takes some work, but you feel so much better when you do it.
Yes.
And it's like annoying to be so busy right now and come home and cook until 9:30 at night. But then the next day when I can just heat a lunch and then go teach lessons, it's like, it's very worth it, and then there are nights where like we had this grand plan to cook and we were out late and whatever, and we made frozen pizza. Cause like, you just have to, you have to have, again, it's like that flexibility with yourself. But I think a lot of it is that it absolutely, and I think this is where we all struggle because we just want to have the willpower to do it, but a lot of things that are worth doing aren't enjoyable. So like,
Yes.
planning a meal or planning meals for, however many people for a week during the holiday season just doesn't feel like a good time.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's right. Just making yourself do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which brings us to number 4, which is movement again. And,
Mhm.
and we actually just talked about this, but whether you need to scale it down, or sometimes maybe you actually might need to do more,
Yeah.
to help yourself feel better and
Yep.
have more energy. It just kind of depends on what you need. And I'm a big proponent of listening to your body, and
Yeah.
like, is this going to be too much for me today? Okay, well then I'm
Mhm.
defaulting to walking, or
Yep.
again, like stretching. And it doesn't even have to be yoga, like just
Yes.
stretching
Yeah.
can be helpful.
Well, and if you're playing a lot during the holidays, that's really important. Like hand health, arm health, shoulders, that stuff is
Mhm.
important. You can't, you can really mess yourself up.
Yes. Well, that's,
Yeah.
I see a chiropractor, like,
Yep.
because my entire left side is
Yep.
just always a mess because,
Yep.
well, we'll talk.
Maintenance. There's a gift to give yourself as a musician.
Uh-huh.
It's like, I just scheduled a massage for January because I did at some point, like when we were painting, I was having all this cramping in my hands
Yeah.
from all the painting we were doing and my forearms. And then, of course, that shows up in my playing. And like, I have to get it worked out. I mean, whatever it came from, wherever it originated, you can't ignore stuff like that. So, like, I had a gig over the weekend with just tons of playing, and at the end of it my hands hurt, and that doesn't usually happen to me. You got to pay attention to yourself.
Right.
What am I doing, and like, where did it come from, and then make sure you're maintaining those things. But I think, you know little things add up. There's so much research now about just like being outdoors and like leisure
Yes.
walking and how important that stuff is for our general health. So, and
Mhm.
that's where it's like, I hate the cold. And my tendency in the
Yep.
winter is literally just to hibernate. Like, I will sit under a blanket all winter
Yes.
and not do a thing and be fine with that. But I
Mhm.
know I need more than that. So that's like that whole, every time I go somewhere and park, I think, okay, like just park a little further away than you want to. It's like an extra minute and a half in the cold. Like, you're fine. So get
Yeah.
the extra outside, like fresh air, get the extra steps of doing it. And I really have to make myself do that stuff.
Yeah.
But you have to listen to, like, just because I want to sit under the blanket, like, doesn't mean I should do it sometimes, but not all the time.
Right. Right.
So, because there is some truth
Yeah.
to winter being a slow season for a reason. Like, we can't go 100%. We were just talking about this all the time, and like physically you cannot. So,
Mhm.
if your body's telling you not to do as much, then don't do as much, but find the things that fit.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And actually, like, walking the cold, I also hate the cold. And
Mhm.
but taking a short walk in the cold um
Mhm.
can be very invigorating, actually.
Yes. Yes.
um and can help your energy
Mhm.
level. Plus, if it's sunny, you got that vitamin
Yep.
D going on. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Once you
Yeah.
get out, it's never as bad as you think it will be. I mean, like, we live downtown, and so part of the reason to live down here is to walk places. And I was getting
Mhm.
ready to drive to a different post office last week, and I thought, this is so stupid. Put your coat on and walk to the post office. But it was
Yeah.
cold out, so
Yeah.
I didn't want to. That was why, like, in my head, I'm like, I'll just drive to the post office.
Yeah.
No, like, put your coat. So I did, and I felt
Mhm.
great afterwards. I'm like, but once you get moving, you warm
Yes.
up a little. It's not so bad.
Right. And I'm kind of forced to do that with our dog, because I have to take
Yeah.
her out. And oh man, 6 a.m. I really do not want to be
Mhm.
going
Mhm.
outside, but
Yes, this is why I have cats.
I like, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
God.
Yeah. Probably
So,
why I should have a dog.
right. Well,
Yeah.
it does help for certain things. She certainly did get me walking more, I will say
Yeah.
that. So there are ways to our stressors and our ways to cope through the holiday season for musicians. And we will try and practice what we preach. Anything else to add, Morgan?
No, I don't think so. I think it's just, some of this stuff, every time we talk about it, it seems obvious. And sometimes it's just things we forget because we're in the moment, we're busy. And it's like always just good to talk about it. I think it's good for people to talk about what's hard and what helps them. And even if it's stuff that comes up on repeat, we all know that we need to hear messages like multiple times for things to stick, or for sometimes we just need to hear it a different way to realize how it could fit in our lifestyle. So I just think it's a good conversation to have.
Yeah. And especially during this time too, because, I'm extremely forgetful. And so, yeah, kind of like bringing this all to light too for anybody, who's listening, hopefully it will trigger like, oh yes, okay, right, maybe I can do that, or maybe I should do that. So hopefully this is helpful. Okay. We hope everyone is having a great holiday, and that you're able to relax and enjoy the time with your family and friends. 2022 has been so exciting for us to launch this podcast and work on it together. And we hope that you guys are enjoying it. And as always, if you have any ideas for shows, please message us at lifebetweenthenotes@gmail.com. And certainly too, on social media, we're on Facebook and Instagram. And if you can also message us there. And if you have any questions or ideas, we love to hear it. And we will also want to encourage everyone to come out on January 7th, 2023 to the Make Music Festival in downtown York. So Morgan will be there, and with many other fantastic musicians in our area. So we are so excited to be a part of that, and Happy New Year to everyone, and thanks for listening.
Yeah.